Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Molly, I'm the maker behind Lefty Knits, and this is a channel where I share all the crafts I've been working on recently. That usually amounts to knitting, and today is no exception. This week I want to see how much I can knit in 1 hour. I've seen some other people doing this and I need some motivation to work on a sock pattern that has been languishing in the land of one completed sock for far too long. So this is the version 3 from the Midwinter sock set by Summer Lee Knits. These yarns are both Cloudborne Merino sock twist yarns. I think that's the name. I'll make sure I know the name and link them if I can find the yarn anywhere. I believe it's discontinued. This like dark purple color is a Malabrigo dyed one, like the purple one, and this like light pink contrast color is I believe the name is Petal. But in any case, I'll find those for you and link them, but perhaps just the Ravelry page, because I'm not sure that there's actually any more of this in stock anywhere, but we'll see. I finished this sock probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I immediately cast on the second one, I think, but I've only gotten this far. I haven't even finished the cuff. So it's time for me to put some work in on these. So this is fingeringly and color work, so it might not be quite as dramatic as some of these videos might be if people are using worsted weight yarn or knitting in simple stockinette or garter stitch, but we're still gonna see how we do here, and I think I'll be able to make a decent amount of progress. More or less, this is a way for me to trick myself into knitting as much of this sock as I can in an hour, and hopefully reigniting my interest in it, and a way to just kind of have a chatty time with you. So I do have a timer set up on my laptop, which you can see right there. I have my iPad right here, so I'll be able to see the pattern. I put a little stitch marker in on this row so that we'll be able to see how far I make it visually, and I am going to go ahead and press start. So I haven't worked on a sock in a really long time, or with 9-inch circulars in a while, so this feels a little awkward, but I'm sure I'll be able to get back into the hang of it. It's funny that it took me so long to get back into this sock. I wish I could remember better, like, why I put it down. I think I might have had like limited knitting mojo for a little bit, and I was knitting like a bunch of socks. And then my mojo came back. I cast on a sweater project that I wanted to make, and you know, kind of abandoning these socks a little bit. They are like, I mean, I'm super happy with them. I like really love the way the first one came out. And like, I want to be able to wear them. It's possible I was also working on these like around the time. I think there might be a few reasons. So when we got our cat, Lola, that it might have been around the time I finished the first one of these socks. And for a couple of weeks, Lola was on ringworm watch. So when we adopted her, she was in like an observation, like quarantine room, and we had gone there specifically to look at her. So we looked at some of the other cats at the shelter, and we were like, oh, you know, these are cute cats, but we came here to look at Lola. Is she one of the cats in the room? And they were like, oh yeah, but like you can look at her. And they said it's probably not ringworm, but if it is, like, you know, you should be careful. And like, oh man, you should be careful. It's it can be pretty severe in cats because it like feeds off of hair follicles, and like you're just gonna have to watch her, monitor her, like always keep a towel between you and her, like wash your hands after you pet her. Like, so we my boyfriend and I basically hopped into like this different like mode, you know, like we covered every surface of our house, like every couch, every soft surface. I mean, we only have one couch. Every chair, every couch, every, you know, everything basically with towels, which we washed frequently and sanitized with like this Lysol stuff beforehand. We were like showering all the time, washing our hands all the time. I mean, which is of course good practice. We're like both pretty diligent hand washers anyway, but it was like a really intense period of like, I started to like wrap my hair up in like old pillowcases and stuff so that I didn't have to like wash it every day, because I didn't want, you know, the ringworm to like get into my own hair if it was, you know, on the cat. So I was not knitting very much at that point. And because I could only really knit in our bedroom, like away from the cat, because I didn't want ringworm in my knitting, and I, you know, I didn't want to have to like sanitize my knitting. I wasn't sure that it would hold up to like some of the sanitizers we were using, just in case, which I'm not even really sure if that would help. Like, some people acted and told us that ringworm is like a really big deal, and other people were kind of like, oh, it's just athlete's foot. Hold on, let me just, all right, I'm actually not sure if I was able to keep my screen from falling asleep, but it turns out that she didn't have ringworm. They even said they didn't think the cat that maybe had ringworm that she was exposed to, they didn't think that cat had ringworm, but like just because it can spread really easily, like in a shelter environment, they were worried. Maybe if we had more rooms in our house, it would have been easier. We live in an apartment with like the bedroom, the bathroom, and the other room, you know, that has like our kitchen, living, and dining kind of all in one. And our desks, both of us have desks there, and we both spend a good amount of time working from home. So, you know, it was just like, it was a very like intense couple of months, and my knitting was, or like weeks, I guess, and my knitting was mostly put away at that point because I didn't want it to become contaminated in that case. So that might have been the reason why this sock got put on hold. The other reason, which was, you know, around the same time, like a little bit after, that time was I went to London and I didn't want to bring a colorwork sock with me. So it's probably one of those two reasons. I guess I'll start by talking a little bit about left-handed or mirror knitting, because that is what I'm doing now. If you are well versed in watching people knit, this probably looks weird to you, or you know, you knit yourself, this probably looks pretty weird to you, because I am knitting the stitches off of my right needle and onto my left. So I knit like across the row, left to right, which is the opposite of how most people do it. I did mention this on my first podcast, and I also mentioned that I learned from a family friend who is, you know, a normal quote-unquote right-handed knitter, and she taught me this way, just like thinking like, oh, I'm she's left-handed, like this is what it'll be. She sat across from me, so I like literally mirrored her movements. I do know that for quite a while I was doing my stitches like pretty wrong. Like I think my knits, like I made what was supposed to be like a garter stitch like square thing, and I think that it turned out like a weird purl, or there were like weird bumps. It didn't look right. I'm not exactly sure what I was doing wrong, but it took me a long time to figure out the correct way to loop my yarn over my needles, and how to, like, you know, which needle should be in front, which should be in back, whether I should wrap the yarn clockwise or counterclockwise. And part of it, I think, was that, you know, this was like over 20 years ago now, and the internet wasn't what it was. Like, obviously the internet existed, but the resources for people who knit differently than standard just like weren't out there in the same way. Or if they were, I mean, I was also a child, so it's possible that I just didn't know where to look for them. Eventually I figured it out and I got pretty good at it. I'm, you know, rocking and rolling with the left-handed or mirror knitting to this day. It's how I've chosen to continue to knit. You know, and I figured out most things, like increasing and decreasing and those angles and like directions I've figured out. Cables are kind of like my final frontier. I talked about this in my last podcast episode, and I talked more about like not knowing or being sure about my cables in my fall knitting plans episode. I think once I am doing like a big cabled project, you know, I'll figure that out. I'll figure out the way that I need to knit cables, and then I'll be fine. And if you happen to be a mirror knitter yourself, and you have already figured out cables, let me know, because I am happy to hear what you have to say, so that I don't have to figure it out myself. I think I will call that ribbing done. I should have 60 stitches, I think, but I just counted 59. But this is a 3 or 2x1 rib, so there's no way, since my knitting is to pattern, like I finish the pattern repeats properly. I'll just say I have 60 and start working on the leg. Back to left-handed knitting. I've Googled things, and there's definitely resources out there. Like if you Google, like, you know, make one right, left-handed, it's there, you know, like people have done it. And I think, like basically, if you are a left-handed knitter and you're here and you aren't sure how to do increases properly, or it says make one left in a pattern, for example, you should like do the action of making one left, like basically, you know, where you put the needle in front to back and then knit off the back loop. Like you should do that, but that creates a right-leaning increase because you're knitting across the row the opposite way. So you can basically just like follow the actions written, and the like slip knit, or slip 2 knitwise and then knit 2 together and knit 2 together, like they all go in the direction, like the directionality of like symmetrical things work themselves out, just like broadly. And I'd be happy to answer questions or talk to you more about it. But I'm like pretty sure that I've gotten that, like figured that one out over the years. I mean, I have mixed feelings in general about being, you know, knitting the way that I do and being a left-handed knitter. I think it kind of has like fueled some imposter syndrome and made me feel like, you know, oh, I do it differently, so I'm not like a real knitter. It's made me sort of hesitant to like start working on garments. I found it really intimidating because I wasn't sure like how, I'm finding this yarn really splitty. I wasn't sure how, you know, how the increases and decreases would work. Someone told me once, or told my mom, who told me, and my mom doesn't knit, so it's possible that it was like relayed completely wrong, but you know, someone said like, oh, you have to like fully swap patterns around, so where it says to knit you should purl, and where it says to purl you should knit. It just like, I think that's like technically probably correct, you know, like it's technically probably correct, you know, in terms of like the direction of things and how I knit across a row and right side, like maybe it's right, but I kind of feel like it was like very scary for me to hear that, and very confusing, like when you're a new knitter and people are like, you're gonna have to do everything fully different. You know, I was like 12 maybe, like that was not like an appealing thought. And it kind of put me off, you know, and it would be like, oh, I should like stop knitting and relearn like someday how to knit like the correct way. It like really stressed me out, and like if I just had learned to knit, you know, the quote unquote normal way, this never would have happened. Or, I mean, I don't know what would have happened. If I had learned to knit the normal way, I wouldn't have like had so much stress about like if I could knit a garment, you know, I would be stressed about that in a different way, in the sense that like it's intimidating when you're a new knitter to knit a garment, but not in the sense of like, oh, it'll turn out like completely fucked up because I'm left-handed and I'm knitting the opposite direction, and like it just won't, like it won't turn out right. It's also made me hesitant to like test patterns for others, you know, like I pretty much am always following directions like exactly the same as everybody else. But like the first time I applied, I wrote this like huge disclaimer, like, oh, I knit left-handed and that means this, but like it also means that, you know, like I'm worried that people will think that I'm like maybe not qualified, but kind of not qualified. And you know, I can read patterns really well. I know what things mean. I think I'm like a very I think I'm like a pretty skilled knitter. I'm gonna start the color work. So charted knitting is one area where things can get kind of interesting, because I knit left to right, so I could follow the chart left to right, like as you read a book, as opposed to right to left, which is how most people would follow a chart on the wrong side. I'm trying to remember what I did. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Left-handed knitting. I've kind of come around to the fact that like I sort of enjoy knitting in a unique way. You know, and I feel more confident and more like a, you know, real knitter. Oh, I need to hold this the other way for dominance reasons. I think it's helped a lot, like getting on Instagram and finding people who also do, like, you know, people call it different things. I tend to call it left-handed knitting. I don't think it matters. You know, but there are people who do mirror knitting out there that I've come across on YouTube and on Instagram. People who have messaged me, you know, because my username makes it clear that I am left-handed. People who have messaged me and said like, oh, like I also knit left-handed, and that's been like, it feels like nice and like, oh great, like it's not just me, because like for a long time it was only me. I was the only one I knew who did this, and it felt weird, and I didn't like that. You know, it doesn't feel good to be different when you're a kid and when you're young, always. Like, no one made fun of me for it. I didn't know that many people who knit anyway, but it's been helpful to know people who also knit left-handed. So there's a podcast called aleftyknitter podcast on here on YouTube. There is, or a Lefty knitting podcast. I think her name is Aquila. I haven't watched too many of her episodes, but I think she does actually, you know, do knit the same way that I do. Night Sky Knitting is another one. Rachel knits the same way I do. And if I think there's a couple people on Instagram I've found, besides people who've just kind of like messaged me about it. But like, it's nice to kind of feel like there's other people around you who do the same thing and you're not just flying blind. And like, once, you know, I came back to knitting when I was like in and just out of college, and there were like actual Googleable resources for me, like that too was helpful. I am making way less progress than I thought I would, but that's fine. For a long time, especially when I was much, you know, more anxious as a person and less confident as a person, and especially less confident as a knitter, you know, I think I felt like I had like made this huge mistake, and I don't feel that way anymore. You know, I think it's kind of fun to like do things differently. Only kind of. Sometimes it's annoying. If you are left-handed and you're watching this and you're thinking of learning how to knit, I would probably not jump to mirror knitting right away. I would suggest knitting, trying to knit, you know, right-handed, knit normally, and feel it out. So I would, you know, probably try, people always say like, oh, continental is like the way you knit if you're left-handed. And I mean, I guess because you're holding the yarn in your left hand, I think that's kind of BS. I don't think that automatically makes sense to me as being like more comfortable. You know, like your left hand is involved, yes, but like, I don't think it matters that much. I would try continental, I would try English, I would sort of see if you can find a way that feels like relatively comfortable to knit right-handed first, keeping in mind that like new styles of knitting or new, you know, doing something new with your body and with your hands is always going to feel like a little bit weird at first, you know, like it's not going to come to you immediately. I would like maybe try to give it a little bit of time, but like if your brain just like absolutely cannot comprehend like normal knitting, then you should go ahead and give mirror knitting a try. You know, it's not the end of the world at all to be a mirror knitter. I do it, lots of people do it, and lots of really talented people do it. It's just that it's less common, and you know, if you are like me, you might find yourself sort of struggling a little bit to work up to that next level. I don't know what I'm doing with the tensioning of this yarn. But like if I'd watched a video of somebody being like, it's okay to, you know, here's my advice to you as a left-handed knitter, and if you've learned to mirror knit, or if that's the way that you feel comfortable knitting, like that's okay. I think it would have saved me a lot of strife. So I'm here to say mirror knitting is fine. It works. I do it. Lots of people do it. It works. There's nothing wrong with knitting this way. I think it does complicate things a little bit, but not insurmountably so. Like by and large, if you're new to this and you're intimidated, if something's symmetrical, especially, you basically just literally follow the directions. And if something's not symmetrical, the changes are usually pretty minimal, if at all. So like, you can definitely Google. There's lots of resources out there. I'm happy to be a resource to you if you're a left-handed knitter. But there's resources. If you Google, like, you know, a knitting technique and then like lefty or left-handed or something, like, you'll find stuff. There's stuff out there. If anybody wants me to make tutorials of certain things, I'm happy to. And, you know, I hesitate to generalize about left-handed people, but I do feel like as a lefty personally, I'm pretty good at kind of like switching things around in my head. So like, you know, I learned how to do pretty much everything I've ever done from someone who is right-handed. Even things that, you know, have a strong like handedness component. I don't think any of my teachers when I was learning to write were right-handed or left-handed, sorry. My parents are both right-handed. No one I can think of in my family, like no older person in my family is right-handed, not a single one that I can think of. The only other lefty in my family is my twin brother, who is much less rigid about his handedness than me. And fun fact, left-handedness is more common in twins. Don't know why. I feel like I'm much more comfortable mirroring people, and like a lot of tutorials I watch, I don't even necessarily honestly anymore like seek out tutorials for knitting things left-handed. You know, a lot of times it's like relatively niche. So I'll just look at and watch someone do the technique, you know, knitting normally, and I will try to copy it. In any case, there are definitely resources out there for you if you are currently a mirror knitter, and I wouldn't, if you've already learned, don't switch. Like, I give you permission. Not that you need my permission at all, but I give you permission to knit left-handed. But anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that. If there are any lefties out here, I'd love to hear, oh God, I'd love to hear from you. I enjoy hearing about how people came to mirror knitting because you know, I guess it was like the thing that felt intuitive to my family friend who knit, and taught me. But it's, yeah, it's like a weird thing. I think a lot of left-handed people just learn to knit normally and never even think about it. Like, you know, people who write left-handed and, you know, would consider themselves like a strongly right-hand or left-handed person. But yeah, for some reason, some of us just end up learning this way. Let's see, how much time is left? 20 minutes. Oh man. Let's get a little bit of a move on. I've mentioned it yet, but today I'm wearing my Anchor's summer shirt. I spoke about it in my most worn knits video if you want to hear more about the materials I used and stuff. I've done 6 rows of the chart so far. 2 minutes left. I wonder if I'll be able to finish this last round. I wouldn't say that I'm like a super fast knitter. I think I spend a lot of time knitting. I don't think I'm very slow either. I think, like, you know, I do think knitting English generally is a little slower for me than continental, but I mean, I think I was able to, when I knit English more, like get into a pretty good groove. I don't like drop the needle or anything. I'm more of a flicker. Is that even right? Did I get off a stitch? Oh, Molly, what did you do? I did get off a stitch, so my time's up. I knit this purple marker is where I started this hour. Up here is where I finished. So, I mean, I made a decent amount of progress. I mean, I did enjoy working on this, and I think it kind of reignited my desire to finish this whip. So looking at this other sock, I got to like here. I just started the flower, this like flower motif I just started. So I'm like here. I did like this much of the sock, basically, which is like a relatively decent amount of the ankle. I think more than anything, when I end up with a hibernating whip, it's not that I am not interested in it, it's that I like got more interested in a different whip that I had going on at that point, and then I got interested in casting something else on, and then it just sort of snowballs into this place where like suddenly I've left a sock sitting on a needle for 6 months, and I, you know, buy a new 9-inch circular in the same needle size instead of just finishing the sock to use it. That is all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great one, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.